I grew up in a house where the lights got cut off twice a year. Not because my parents were careless. Because the math never worked, no matter how carefully my father ran it at the kitchen table. With a pen and a yellow legal pad, the numbers always came up short. He worked with his hands. My mother worked early shifts. They were not lazy people. They were tired people. There is a difference. And I learned it young. What I also learned was that the only way out of a system built against you is to understand it better than the people running it. So I studied. Not because anyone told me to, because I had seen what happens to people who don't. I got a scholarship. I graduated with honors and more debt than I could count. And on a cold morning, I walked into that building for the first time young, wearing the only blazer I owned, believing, the way only young people can believe, that the work would be enough. That if you were good enough, they would see it. That was my first mistake. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that does not announce itself. It doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates, the way water finds its way into a foundation. Slow, quiet, and by the time you notice the damage, it has already been going on for a long time. It sits in your chest at 7 in the morning, while you stare at a concrete parking lot and you realize you have forgotten what trees look like. For 3 years, I gave everything I had to a company that saw me as a resource. Not a person, a resource. I spent the first 6 months watching my hands shake. Not dramatically, just a small tremor over the keyboard at midnight. My third cup of cold coffee going warm on the desk beside me. The building empty except for the hum of machines and the sound of my own breathing. Outside, the city was living its life. People were eating dinner, watching television, sleeping next to someone they loved. I was inside, fixing a broken system that should never have been left the way it was, line by line, record by record, alone. I ate poorly. I slept 4 hours. I stopped calling people back because I had nothing to say that wasn't about work. And I noticed, one morning in the shower, a cluster of hair in the drain that had not been there the week before. I stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then I got dressed and went back in. Nobody acknowledged the overtime. I don't think they saw it. I don't think they saw me. So I did what desperate people do. I built something. Not for them. For myself. A solution assembled at night in my cramped apartment, on a second-hand desk wedged between the wall and the window, with the city noise bleeding through the glass. I wasn't thinking about credit or recognition. I was thinking about survival. About buying back enough of my own life to remember why I had wanted any of this in the first place. The work was meticulous. Months of it. Testing, rebuilding, refining. There were nights I sat back at 2 in the morning and felt something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Pride. Quiet, private pride. The kind that doesn't need an audience. By the time I was done, what used to take 40 hours a week was being handled automatically in minutes. The crushing weight that had been slowly taking years off my life, silently gone. I kept the core of it on a private system under my desk, unlinked from anything they owned. Force of habit, I built in a 30-day security lock, a routine safeguard, just to protect my work from being wiped by an automated sweep. For the first time in 3 years. I could look out the window. My small team could breathe. We stopped flinching. We stopped working weekends. For a brief, quiet stretch of time, we were just people doing a job. Instead of people trying not to drown. I thought I had earned it. I thought the hard part was over. Then he arrived. I won't use his name. He came in wearing suits that cost more than my rent, carrying the specific energy of a man who has never been told no by anyone below him. He had the handshake of someone performing confidence and the eyes of someone who had learned to look at human beings the way an accountant looks at a spreadsheet. Useful or redundant. That was the entire calculation. He didn't understand what we did. He didn't understand the infrastructure or the history or what it had actually taken to get the department running the way it was. But he understood org charts. And he understood that while other departments around us were visibly struggling, ours was running perfectly. 0 overtime, 0 crises, 0 noise. He didn't ask why. He assumed we were idle. Within 2 weeks, he had slashed the budget, cut positions, reduced resources, I sat in the all-hands meeting and watched him deliver these decisions with the calm authority of someone who has never had to live with the consequences of his own choices. I stayed quiet. I let my work absorb the pressure. Same way it always had. I told myself, the work speaks. Eventually, the work always speaks. The meeting was on a Thursday. I had prepared for it. Documentation. Comparisons. 3 years of evidence, organized carefully, carried into that room with both hands. I walked in expecting to be recognized. He handed me a cardboard box. My entire team gone. My position, the one I had built from nothing, the one that had quietly become the backbone of the entire operation, handed to his young relative. Someone who had just finished school. Someone who, in our first conversation, asked me to explain concepts that I had mastered years ago. He looked at me, through me, with a completely blank expression and said, "This department practically runs itself. We don't need someone just to click a few buttons." The room was very quiet. I remember the sound of the air conditioning. I remember my folder of documentation sitting on the table, 3 years of evidence that no one was going to read. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the humiliation, though there was plenty of that. It was the absolute, unbothered certainty in his voice that everything I had sacrificed amounted to nothing more than clicking a few buttons. I had 2 weeks to hand everything over, or they would withhold what they owed me. I said, fine. And I meant something by it that he did not understand. I want you to understand what those 2 weeks felt like. Imagine building something with your own hands, something intricate, something that took years of knowledge and hundreds of sleepless nights, and then being told to explain it to someone who doesn't know what it is, while they half listen and look at their phone. Every morning, every afternoon. He wasn't cruel. That almost made it worse. He was simply indifferent. The way people are indifferent to things they've been handed rather than earned. He had no frame of reference for what any of it had cost. Nobody had told him. The system had handed him a kingdom and forgotten to mention who built it. Near the end of those 2 weeks, he got frustrated. His face tightened, that particular expression of entitlement meeting inconvenience, and he moved to delete something he didn't understand. The core of my security system. If he had done it, everything would have crashed. Immediately. While I was still in the building, still on record, still technically responsible. They would have blamed me. My chest tightened. I reached over slowly, calmly, and moved his hand away from it. "Not that one," I said quietly. He laughed it off. He had absolutely no idea. My last evening, I cleared my desk slowly. A photograph. A mug. A small plant I had kept alive on the windowsill for years because it required almost nothing and asked for nothing in return, and I had found that, quietly, admirable. I went to collect some documents from the printer. What came out of the tray instead was a memo that was never meant for me. I stood under the fluorescent light of that empty hallway and read it once. Then I read it again. They had not just replaced me. They had taken my entire system, my architecture, my logic, my work, documented it, repackaged it, and were preparing to file for legal ownership of it, under their own names, to sell it for millions to a company above them. My work, my nights, my shaking hands, under their names. I stood in that dark hallway for a long time. The building was quiet around me. Somewhere down the corridor, a cleaning cart wheeled past. Outside the window, the city moved the way it always does, indifferent and bright and completely unconcerned. I felt something go very still inside me. Not anger, not grief. Something colder than both. I packed my single box. I nodded at the security guard, a man who had said good morning to me every single day for 3 years, and who deserved far better than this building. And I walked out into the cold night air, without saying anything, to anyone. 30 days later, at 8:01 on a Monday morning, the system asked for the security signature it had been patiently waiting for. A routine prompt. Automated. Patient. He didn't know what it meant. He dismissed it. Everything went dark at 8:03. Not gradually. Not with warning. One moment the system was running, and the next, it was simply gone. Operations froze across multiple regions. Tracking systems returned errors. People on the ground had no information, no routing, no manifests. Cargo sat stranded. Refrigerated shipments, food, medicine, perishables sat in containers while the temperature climbed. The calls started at 9. He called 14 times that day. The first voicemail, he was yelling, demanding. The voice of a man who has never had to ask for anything, suddenly having to ask for everything. By the 5th, the yelling had become urgency. By the 10th, his voice had changed into something I had never heard from him before. Desperation. By the 14th, he was almost whispering, "Please, they're going to ruin my family." I listened to all 14, sitting at my kitchen table, with a cup of coffee that had gone warm the right way because I had made it myself, at home, at a reasonable hour, like a person with a life. I did not call back. The people above him were inside the building by the following day. The investigation confirmed everything the memo had already told me. Stolen work. False ownership. A cover-up that unraveled the moment anyone looked at the dates. He and his relative were escorted from the building by security that afternoon. Heads down. Carrying boxes. I watched it from across the floor because I was already back inside. Not as an employee. As an independent consultant, contracted at a rate that made their legal team flinch, with payment secured up front, terms agreed to in writing, within hours of the system going dark. I walked to my old desk, reached underneath it, connected the one piece of hardware only I had, and hit 3 keys. The whole system came alive in seconds. The same few minutes it had always taken. Nothing had changed. Nothing had broken. The work I built was still exactly what it had always been: patient, precise, and waiting for the only person who knew how to ask it properly. I watched him walk out through the lobby glass. I had imagined this moment during those 2 weeks of quiet humiliation. I expected something dramatic to live inside it. Satisfaction. Vindication. The specific pleasure of a debt being repaid. What I actually felt was quiet. Just quiet. The kind that comes after something has finally been set down. The system will find you when you are young and hungry and willing to give it everything. It will take your nights, your health, your time, the years you will never get back. It will watch you build something extraordinary, and the moment it decides it no longer needs you, it will put you outside and pretend you were never there. What it always forgets is that systems do not run themselves. Someone built them. Someone understands them. And the person who built the castle can always turn the key and leave you locked outside in the dark.